All right, is the old wad cutter any good for 38 special? I'm going to compare that to some 9mm. So yesterday I was at my local sports store. I happened to find some primers. I haven't seen small pistol primers for a long time. These are actually Magnum, but they'll work for what I'm doing here just as well. So what I want to do is I want to compare some wad cutters that I've hand loaded compared to some just basic 9mm. So our 9mm here is our Federal Hydroshock 124 grain. I've actually been curious about this load for a long time, because when I first got into handguns about 15 years ago, that was one of the rounds of ammunition that I had loaded in my 9mm pistol. And at the time, you couldn't purchase HST and stuff like that, and that seemed to be pretty popular. So I've wondered for about 15 years, how well would that have done if I had needed to use it back then. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to compare it to some 38 special wad cutters. Now, I just did a wad cutter test about a month ago. Very low performing Fiocchis that we got like upper 500 feet per second for velocity. So what I did here is I took some universal powder that I had. I used some Magnum primers and actually put about 4 grains of powder in these wad cutters, which is a little bit above the top charge. However, I'm using a 357 mag revolver. They'd probably be fine in a 38 plus P revolver as well, but I don't recommend just not going by the book. But that's what I did here. And what I did here is I loaded some traditionally and brass cases, and I loaded some inverted or backwards to create hollow points in our nickel plated cases here, and they are out just a little bit further seated because they're going to go deeper in there with the flat base being down. So we're going to have some traditional wad cutters, we're going to have some inverted wad cutters loaded relatively warm. We can compare that to some typical 9mm guns used, have almost identical barrel travel here, our Taurus G2C and our Taurus 605. We have about a 3.2 inch barrel, which is very comparable to a 2-inch barrel revolver as far as barrel travel and overall size. Guns both weigh about 20 ounces, so it should be fair in that regard to see what we can get with something like that. So I'm going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy I get at the same time. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic test. This is some old gel that I had laying around. Figured that would work for a test like this. So we're just going to go into plain clear ballistic, see what our best potential is of these, and after that I'm going to put on 4 layers of denim in front of this first part here of 3 inches of clear ballistics. That represents our pectoral muscle. Clear ballistics is half as dense as real flesh, so this is kind of like representing about 1.5 inches pectoral muscle. And after that we're going to put in a 1/4 inch medium density fiber board to represent hitting ribs or sternum. So 1 shot just plain gel, 1 shot more real world, and we'll see which ones do better, forward facing, backwards facing our traditional 9mm. And then I'm going to shoot up my steel target here from various distances. I'll probably go up a little bit closer to see what kind of quick shootability I can get with these, see if the 38s are easier to land and stuff like that. So let's get started with this test. All right, I'm about 5 yards from the target, which is about 4.5 yards from the chronograph. First up, we're going to test our 9mm 124 grain, by the way, Hydroshock, right at 1120 feet per second. Let's see what I get in my little Taurus G2C here. See how close we get to 1120 feet per second. 1046, 1031, 1037, 1029, 1018. So quite a bit below our rate of velocity. And this Taurus G2C actually does shoot pretty fast for its barrel length of 3.2 inches. So that's kind of weak there. 38 special. Now these are our traditionally seated, all the way in the case wad cutters. 148 grain, by the way, Hornady wad cutters with 4 grains of universal powder. So let's see how this does. .808, 776, 746, 781. No, Reed, I'll take that though. Quite a bit of smoke, because when you go high on powder charges on pure lead bullets, especially ones coated in wax the way these ones are, you're going to get a lot of smoke. So not as consistent as I would like to see. Now our same bullets loaded upside down here. Same powder charge and everything, but they should be deeper in the case. I guess theoretically they should have more velocity, which is what I'm looking to see anyways. I'm looking for less with the straight ones and more with the backwards ones, because we're not going to expand with our forward ones. We don't want too much penetration. but we want enough power on these to potentially expand. So let's see what we get here. No read. 717, 724, 758. No read. I'm going to take that. I was thinking they would be higher, and they're actually lower, which is interesting. So I don't know exactly what's going on there, and it looks like my accuracy might be a little weird. That could just be me, but we'll hit our ballistics gel block anyway and just kind of see what we get with these. All right, best potential shot with our 9mm plain gel. Let's see what this does. All right, 38 special. We're gonna go with our traditionally loaded Wadcutter here. See how it does. Now we're gonna run our backwards Wadcutter here. See how this one does. All right, I made kind of a face because it looked like something weird was going on, and yeah, it jumped up out of that block there with our backwards one. So let me run one more backwards one. Let's go take a look. So it was weird because it looked like almost like it hit with an oblong hole here, but what we got with our 9mm, I know this is old gel, so it's hard to see, but what we're looking at with our 9mm here is about 14 3/4, and it looks pretty good. Now, interesting thing here is what we see with our Wadcutters is different. Our traditionally loaded one is right at about 22 inches. That's definitely over penetration. With our backwards one, it looks kind of interesting. I can see a little bit of damage. It sucked back a little bit. We're about 12.5 inches. It almost looks like that backwards one tumbler is going backwards. Maybe not, but almost from this angle, that's what it looks like, which is interesting. So there's definitely a difference on the penetration, and neither of them look like they deformed. So that's what's interesting about this, is the significant difference there. It kind of proves my theory I had that the non-expanding hollow points can slow bullets down. Because that's kind of what we're seeing, that kind of effect. So let's put our MDF and our DUM and see how they compare that way. All right, we have our denim and our MDF. This is historically where I've had issues with 9mm, old school 9mm, I should say, where it sometimes has trouble expanding. So 9mm Hydra Shock, let's see what this will do. All right, let's try our 38s now. All right, 38 special. This is the test that I always will use if I'm going to recommend ammunition or carry it myself. If it defeats denim and expands and all that. So here is our 38 special with our traditionally forward-facing Wadcutter. Let's try our backwards Wadcutter now. All right, backwards Wadcutter. I get the feeling this might underpenetrate because that MDF might cause more expansion. So backwards Wadcutter. Let's see what we get. Let's go take a look. All right, so the difference is there. With our 9mm, we did not get expansion. This is the thing that I've seen so many different times in a row, where we just do not get any expansion. We can see right here that's tumbling damage, but we have got definitely got some clogging of that hollow point, and there is absolutely no expansion with that bullet, no deformation. That's the type of thing I would not recommend. Now with our forward-facing Wadcutter, what's interesting here is we got about 20 3/4 inches, which is not really significant over penetration. I would say that's, both of these are within the realm of being okay. Now what I'm seeing here with our MDF, this is kind of indicating what I thought I saw before. when I made that weird shot and I made that face, this is what I saw impacting with that backwards Wadcutter. It's obviously started to tumble immediately as it hit this, which, you know, a lengthwise Wadcutter is very wide, so it is definitely going to cause a lot of damage, but that's not really what I'm wanting to see. And we can see with our forward-facing Wadcutter, definitely a bigger hole, so that would indicate some deformation, more than the 9mm. But what we got for penetration with our backwards Wadcutter is 11.5 inches, which is a little bit shallow, and I don't really see any expansion of that skirt of that bullet. So what I'm gonna say here is, damage-wise, it looks like the 9mm did the best, and we had the least over penetration. But I'm gonna say our forward traditional facing Wadcutter is pretty equal to that 9mm, other than it did over penetrate a little bit too much here in our plain gel shop. It's not extreme over penetration though, but I'm going to say our 9mm and our 38 special forward facing, when it comes to the real world test anyway, are pretty similar. Our backwards one, you know, this is the thing, it's hard for me to recommend backwards ones for several reasons. One of the main reasons is I have tested this with various different Wadcutter bullet designs, different hollow based Wadcutters, different powders, and I have never got the same result with any of them. If it's like a copper plated one, there's no expansion, and they over penetrate more than the pure lead ones. I've ran some pure lead ones in a 4-inch barrel, and they expanded huge, but in the 2-inch barrel, the reason why I'm using the 2-inch barrel is that's more realistic what people are going to carry. I don't see that expansion. As we're with our forward-facing Wadcutter, you could make little tweaks to that and have a pretty good load overall. So let me shoot at my steel now and see what kind of practical accuracy I can get. All right, I am 12 yards from the target. I'm going to pull up my 9mm, get a sight picture to see how shootable this stuff can be. It's standard pressure, so let's see what I can get on target. All right. And with that, I'm not really aiming. I'm not getting a very good sight picture. I'm just barely seeing the target, and I am just going by muscle memory. So in terms of being a shootable round, I'm going to say that's very shootable in this gun. So that counts for something. 38 special, I'm going to go with our standard forward-facing Wadcutters. Same thing, get a sight picture and see how they shoot for me. This might be challenging with the smoke. Alright. A little bit different accuracy. I did pull one high. That's pretty typical with stuff like this. Now our backwards facing Wadcutters, you know, there could be a potential shift in our point of impact. So let's see what I can get with our backwards one. Just pull up, see what I can get. Yeah, I did pull one high there, but overall I'd say the rest of them are pretty much, at this distance, it's the same as the forward facing. So let me back it up just a little bit. All right, I'm at my 50-yard marker. Let's see what our 9mm can do from this distance through this little Taurus pistol. All right, so this ammo is impacting a good bit to the right and low. I had to change my point of aim to the left shoulder, and then I started making hits. Within that, there was one that I completely pulled, but the first few shots they were just a different point of impact from where I was aiming. So first up, with our 38, I'm going to run these backwards Wadcutters. I feel like they're not accurate, but who knows until I test it. So let me just aim center mass. Let me go single action because I want to do one shot where I'm not focusing on making the next shot and just kind of see where they hit. All right, so yeah, they are hitting a little bit high, so I need to aim roughly at the base of the steel here. All right, yeah. Those are not right. Those are not right. that went beyond normal differences here, because it doesn't always translate to on the downrange camera. Maybe I'll run it again just on this one zoomed in, but what you'll see is that they were hitting all over. I mean, high by about 4 feet and left by 4 feet. The next shot, the exact same distance, but to the right and low. They were not right, and those are not something I would run at any further distance, that's for sure. So for whatever reason, that's just too much charge for those. Now here's our traditionally loaded Wadcutters. Let me do one in single action like I did before. See where they hit. All right, so yeah, those are hitting significantly high. I think I made a headshot. I was actually aiming about 70% down at the bottom of the target. So I will have to aim basically touching the bottom of the steel. Let's see what I can do. All right, so I kind of get an idea where it was hit, and I think I actually hit the post. So they are very much perfect windage. So let me load up a few more of those and just see what I can get from 75 yards just for fun. All right, 75 yards, and I do have to reiterate to a lot of people, this is just for fun. You know, where I grew up is very rural. You know, people will always be like, how far can you shoot that? I bet you can't take a deer from there, and stuff like that, you know. So it's just kind of ingrained into us that shooting at distance is kind of a neat thing to do. So it's not necessarily a practical thing. So with this, I think I'm going to have to aim below the target. There's a possibility at this distance the bullets that we're shooting high might start dropping, but I'm going to aim kind of low and see what we get. Alright, so I'm just aiming right at the base of the target. That seems to be about where they want to be. So roughly what they were at 50 yards, but I think they're impacting just a little bit closer to point of aim. All right, so not the best I've ever done, and some of those shots I pulled them. So what I'm gonna say here, and I've seen this not only with my own testing in the past, but I bought some atomic Wadcutters that were backwards loaded before. And what I'm gonna say is overall, you should probably stay away from backwards loaded Wadcutters. I'm just not seeing anything with them that's ever been consistent. I've never been able to pull off, you know, testing one and any barrel length that does what you really want it to do. You know, like 80% of the time they over penetrate and the hollow base doesn't expand. The other 20% of the time it'll mushroom out to 1 inch and only penetrate like 6 inches. I'm just not seeing where we're going to have anything that's consistent. Now with Wadcutters, this is pretty easy. Now this particular load in and of itself, I would carry it, because what did we get, like 22 inches or something like that in the gel, and then with our more real world testing or something like that with the real world testing, what I'm seeing is that whatever over penetration that there was, it wasn't significant enough that I wouldn't carry it, because if it passed through an attacker, it's not going to go very far. It's just not something I'd be concerned about the way I would like somebody jacket a soft point 44 mag or something like that. It would work. And with this, you can just back off a little bit of powder and you'd be right where you want to be. So what I'm seeing overall here, I'm going to say that the 9mm in general was probably the better of these 3 loads. But in terms of 9mm goes, with modern bullet technology, it wasn't particularly good, but it was decent. It was decent for what it was. I'll say that the forward-facing Wadcutter was similar. It was similar. It almost rivaled that 9mm. So in terms of just using straight Wadcutters the way that they are traditionally loaded, I still think there's a pretty good viability there. Loading them backwards, not really a good use for it. I suppose if you're a farmer, you have big raccoons, the shallow penetration and massive energy dump, if you had a hot enough one, would probably be good. But as far as self-defense goes, stick with your forward-facing Wadcutters. Look at Lucky Gunner. They have like a list of stuff that they tested, and there's certain ones that have higher and higher on the velocity numbers that were closer to what I got here. Stay away from, Fiocchi and stuff like that. Little bit too little velocity. So that's what you get today. Interesting test is really the only way I could sum it up. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.